The Gamers, Kyla's Rescue, written and narrated by C. Taylor, edited to meet YouTube guidelines. To purchase the unedited book, please click the link in the description. Chapter 15. From Jareth's perspective. Well, that's disappointing. Jareth groaned as he watched the video feed. He had reconnected the camera while they were all in the medical suite, and now that Sky's trinket was turned off, both sound and image were perfectly clear. He, General Arvin, and Kyla were all watching the events in the medical suite from the bridge. Give him a minute. He'll figure out how to get the information we need, Kyla cautioned. From Kate's perspective, Kate watched her. She wasn't lying. How was it she wasn't lying? He took a breath and searched for another way to ask for the information he needed. Which was the first device you collected? Let's start at the beginning. Sky looked through the collection and pointed at the video feed disruptor. Kate picked it up and had her look at it. Okay, walk me through beginning to end with developing it. Sky recounted being called for her third special project. By then, she realized they were using her ideas to hurt people. They needed her ideas on how to get a consortium spook passports with facial scans without alerting monitors to any unnatural interference. The day the device was in final testing, she had been invited to the lab to help fine-tune the programming to make sure it worked correctly. She was at a table with the device and all the materials that made it. She reached her hand to feel the materials and remembered wishing she had one of the devices she could take home. Her palm holding the material started to tickle. When she opened her hand, there was another device. She closed her hand over it, slid it to the end of the table, then moved it to her pocket. At the end of the session, all the known devices were counted and secured. She left the building without setting off any security alarms and took it home. And the same thing happened with all the others? Kate asked, starting to suspect something that shouldn't be possible. Sky nodded. Cade turned toward the camera. Jareth, I need you in the medical suite now, he ordered. From Sky's perspective, Sky's eyes shot to the camera. Of course they reconnected it. The soldiers changing it was just an act. She'd fallen for their trap. How could she be so stupid? Sky's knees gave and she crumpled to the floor. She pulled her legs to her chest and hugged them. She wouldn't let herself be sedated again. The mistakes she was making were dangerous. She needed to stay alert, needed to leave these people as soon as possible. She heard his voice. He was talking with Cade. Cade told him to check her, then she felt his touch. For the first time since she'd met him, she flinched away from his touch. It didn't hurt. It never hurt, but she was feeling too vulnerable, too much like a danger to everyone. Sky, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. Cade wants me to check something, and if he's right, it may explain a lot of things. A lot of things you don't understand, and I think it's hurting you that you don't understand. Jareth was crouched down with her, watching her. Sky hugged her legs closer. Don't sedate me anymore. It's too scary when I wake up. I don't like it. Cade stiffened behind them. He moved to get closer, and Sky flinched again, locking eyes with his. He stopped. Jareth moved, so his face blocked Sky's view of Cade, stayed there until her eyes moved to his. Okay, I won't sedate you again, but your body still needs rest, and I'm hoping what we discover will help you do that. I just need to take a little red liquid, if that's okay. He was being softer than usual, his voice, his eyes. He wasn't smiling, but his face was relaxed. She braced herself against the pull she always felt toward him, and nodded. He moved to get his instruments without breaking eye contact. One quick pinch, and it was over. Whatever they thought they knew about her, whatever magic trick they thought would fix everything, would be confirmed with a little of her red liquid. She heard laughing. Two voices, male and female, sounded coming up the hall outside the medical suite. One she recognized as Rylan, the other feminine must be Jenicky. They were talking about how fun their trip to the party planet had been. Now that they were back, they could plan their next trip. By the potentate, is she being dramatic again? He exclaimed once they came into view of the medical suite. Seriously, Sky? You can't do this in front of our host. It's just embarrassing. It makes me look bad. Sky's eyes dropped from Jareth, head tucked, hands covering the gap between her head and her knees. She felt Jareth move, heard Cade move also, then Ryland's voice again. Holy crap, who are you? The question came out in a shriek. She heard an impact along with the scream. He must have ran into something. Silence for a minute, then Jenike's voice. Come on, Rylan. If you thought the ship was boring before, it's worse when these two are on board. Let's go plan our next trip now. More movement, receding steps, then Jareth's hand was on her shoulder again. I need to check this. Let me help you back to your berth so you can be more comfortable. Sky stiffened and shook her head. Jareth rubbed her arm soothingly and leaned close to her ear. That's okay. I know you don't believe me, but you were safe. We're just trying to help, but whatever makes you feel secure is okay. I need to check this, but I'll be right back. Sky didn't move, cursed herself for missing his touch when Jareth moved away from her. She heard him move to the helix, lowered her hand enough to peek, and watched as he placed the extracted liquid on the slide, then watched the screen as it magnified the fluid. He watched a few more minutes, then looked up at Kate and nodded. What were they seeing? Sky wasn't sure if she wanted to know. Then Jareth turned to Sky. You said that both you and Kyla were injured during that first simulation together. Were either or both of you bleeding then? Both, Sky confirmed. Jareth's head shot to Cade. We need to move to the bridge for the rest of this conversation, Cade ordered. Sky hoped she wouldn't be included, but Jareth crouched down again and started rubbing her arm. I could carry you, he offered. Sky flinched away again and shook her head. She wasn't asked if she wanted to go, and since they were willing to carry her, her consent didn't seem to matter either. She pushed herself up on shaky legs and waited for the two men to move first. They didn't. Both men stepped back and allowed her to walk in front of them. The Sky silently cursed. A few moments later. From Kate's perspective, on the bridge, the doors were sealed with only the five of them. Sky was sitting since her legs were still shaking almost as much as Kyla's. Kate leaned against the center console and spoke to Sky. Jareth has just confirmed that you are as much a part of this as we are, but you are the only one that doesn't know the whole story, at least as much as the story as we know. Kate took a deep breath to organize his thoughts. Where to begin? He watched Sky, still fascinated with her. He had watched footage of her, heard people he trusted talk about her. Then, when he finally met her, she was clearly frightened of him and still told him no when he instructed her to explain. A word he never heard anyone tell him in response to one of his requests. The shock made him pause. Then he eventually understood she hadn't said it as a challenge, but as an honest answer. He just needed to learn to ask her the right questions. What do you know about the Magi? Their beginning or their end? A smile tugged at his lips. He suppressed it. She clearly knew more than enough, but her comment was a matter-of-fact inquiry, not an arrogant flaunting of her knowledge. He wanted to test her. Summary. Sky breathed in. She looked up. Her eyes danced as she thought. Jareth had mentioned this. He was watching her think. They were a college of warrior queens and wise women. They were mostly charged with the care and education of the future leaders of the known universes. Some were entrusted with bearing children to the noble families. The belief was that they would guide or produce wise men that would lead justly. No one was trusted with any leading positions in the known universes unless they were tutored by one. She paused, her eyes still dancing before she continued. They became subject to a madness disease. It started with the wife of the current potentate, but it happened before he was the potentate. She killed her charges before disappearing for several months. Then she committed a series of crimes before she was caught and executed. Cade's hands clenched at those words, but he stayed quiet. Then it spread to the others, all the others. Many killed their charges then themselves before all surviving members were quarantined, then executed as soon as they showed signs of the madness. The last potentate protected his wife until she also went mad and killed him. She disappeared. She was the last one. Tears leaked out of her eyes as she spoke. Her lips quivered, but she still recounted the history. The current potentate was the only remaining viable candidate under the old laws. He was endowed with his current powers the day after the last potentate passed. With no magi left, it was then established his children would inherit after him. The lines of succession have reverted to the ancient way when planets and universes warred. and powers were allowed to corrupt since they are again given and not earned. Not many know of this history, so few understand how dangerous this is. Not enough to stop it from happening again. She surprised Kate by understanding the impact of the story. Her voice broke. She breathed out and looked down. He's doing horrible things and using Serenia at an unprecedented level. The games and simulations are programmed with stimulus that triggers addictions and dependencies. Any planet that poses a threat is treated to extra options. It's like everyone's eyes are being covered. Cade leaned forward. Not everyone's. You and Kyla made sure of that. He wasn't sure why he felt so compelled to comfort her, but she needed to understand her impact on what was currently happening. He was rewarded by her weak but genuine smile. The recruits. I never thought I'd get to see it. Thank you for gathering and training them. She looked up at him then, her eyes showing the truth in her words. Not trusting his voice, he nodded. Then her eyes searched his. I'm not sure if I summarized enough. Was there any part relevant to what you and Kyla are doing that I missed? The smile pulled at his lips again. No, that was the parts of the history I needed you to understand. We found the source of the madness, he explained, then started tapping his screen. He noticed her eyes grow wide, then instantly look at the screen when the video feed started. The footage was clearly older, grainy, digital, and degraded from being re recorded illegally so it wouldn't be lost. It was a lab, several scientists, some programmers she recognized. Information feeds scrolled across the monitors in the room. Sky gasped as she read the information. The plan was horrific, but history told her it had already succeeded. Then the current potentate stepped into the room. He looked young, wearing his earlier ambassador robes. All others present deferred to him. It was all his plan from the beginning. His wife had been the first test subject, but the first try didn't go the way it was intended. They used microscopic anatomic devices intended to control the minds of the Magi, but once introduced into his wife, she became out of control instead of completely controlled. The programming intended to have her covertly kill her charge, then herself, but the effects were much more dramatic. Instead of altering the technology, they altered their strategy. It had worked. The potential leaders that stood between him and his desired position were killed. Their Magi madness was to blame. No need to investigate when the murderer was already dead. Over and over it worked until the previous potentate's wife disappeared. After years of searching, they assumed she was dead and turned their focus on other plans. Cade tabbed through some pictures. All the infected magi behaved the same except these two. He brought up the image of the previous potentate's wife and the current potentate's late wife. These two disappeared once the madness took hold. This one, he focused on the current potentate's late wife, resurfaced after several months. The other never appeared again. Sky watched him. You know why, she observed. I can only confirm they were pregnant at the time they were infected. From Sky's perspective, Sky looked at the two images. She pointed at the current potentate's late wife. You are her son, she already knew. He nodded back at her. Her eyes narrowed as he watched him and General Arbin stand together. She was married to him, but he, she pointed at the general, is your father. She had known they were father and son from the moment she saw Cade. Both men looked at each other. The general cleared his throat. The marriage had been arranged by his family. He was always unkind to her, violently unkind. She was going to separate from him, which would have been her right, but it would have ended any chance for him to become a leader. Any leader. I should have taken her with me the moment she mentioned the separation, but she insisted on handling it. He broke. Had to take a few breaths before continuing. After she disappeared, I was arrested on suspicion of being her accomplice, effectively announcing our relationship. By the time I was released, she was dead and I was exiled. I didn't find out until years later I had a son. His hand came to Cade's shoulder. Sky didn't think she could be any more surprised or upset by their current potentate's action, but after hearing this, she wanted to vomit. She hoped she could express her appreciation for the potentate's actions face to face one day. Then she looked at Kyla. And you are her daughter. She pointed at the previous potentate's wife. Kyla nodded. Sky flinched, remembering what Kyla had told her about the last time she saw her mother. Suddenly, the story of both women became horrifically clear. With the programming, all their actions make sense. Everyone in the room looked at her. Had she said something wrong? What programming? Kate asked. Sky's eyebrows pulled together. Didn't you see it? All heads shook. Rewind to the third lab recording, 3 minutes in, she instructed. Cade tapped the screen. Jareth stood next to him and leaned in. He whispered something, and Cade nodded. The feed picked up where Sky had requested. Stop there. The feed froze. Right there, she pointed the programming code that was scrolling to the right of the image. The directive to kill someone specific, then kill themselves, but between those two, protect all other life. When our current potentate came to visit in the previous footage, he expressed his concern that none of his allies be harmed. That was the safegate measure to ensure that no one he needed would be harmed. Both women were pregnant. The program stopped there until the life inside them no longer needed them to be safe. Kyla's legs buckled and she screamed. Tears of rage flowed and a ragged sound echoed off the walls. I watched my mother slit her own throat when I was being taken away on the shuttle to Suenia. That's why? Sky vomited. She crumpled to the floor after and crawled to Kyla. Kyla reached for Sky, closing her arms around her when she was close enough. Sky held her as she cried so hard her whole body shook. I never understood her. I thought she was crazy, but she was just trying to keep me safe. Sky held her as her body shook. She looked up at Kate and the general. You were in prison when his mother reappeared and committed those crimes? She asked the general. He nodded, tears filling his eyes. I think she was trying to get to you, to tell you about your son. She would have known you could keep him safe. Sky knew her words were painful to hear, but she also knew those women's actions deserved to be understood and honored. Kyla calmed, enough to speak again. I understood your hatred for the potentate after they used your plan on Niobe, but I never shared that hatred for him until now. She kept her hold on Sky. Sky felt her head raised to look at the men still standing at the console. Let's do it, Kate. All of it. We will. The now familiar voice sounded behind her. But we have to finish explaining to Sky. Sky felt Kyla's head move up and down in a nod. Her arms loosened from around her. She leaned back, stroking Sky's hair away from her eyes. Kate and I have been infected with the micro AI from birth. You've just explained something we've never been able to figure out. Everyone infected has gone crazy, but they haven't with us, and they've allowed us to do things we shouldn't be able to do. Jareth just confirmed you are also infected, most likely from our injuries from that first simulation. We think that's how you created the trinkets, but you're the only person we found that's been able to survive the infection longer than a few months that wasn't born with it. Sky watched her, realizing something. But the original programming keeps making me need to leave you if I even think I've done something to harm you. Kyla inhaled, then nodded. Apparently. And if I do, the program will finish. That realization made Sky shiver. Kyla held Sky in her familiar death grip. I've never been so grateful I can't let you go. Sky smiled, then hugged her again. Me too. Sky pulled away, eyes searching as her mind processed. So I'm not crazy. Or a witch. Her brain finally understanding so much of her life. Sky heard faint chuckling behind her. Even Kyla smiled. It's a surprise to me too, the witch part, not the crazy. I already knew you weren't. Sky took a deep, calming breath, the new knowledge quieting so many fears she carried for decades. Then she remembered, Kyla, you can change code. Kyla's eyes grew wide. She reached for Sky, placed her hands on each side of her head, and closed her eyes. Sky felt it. A rush of calm, peace. She was safe. She was enough. Everything was okay. She felt it as an outside push, separate from her mind, but her mind wanted to believe it. It had believed the other messages for so long, though, it wasn't sure how. It felt new, but nice. Her body responded. Muscles that were always tense relaxed. Her mind quieted for the first time in decades. The relief left her feeling weak, made her eyes sting, meant everything to her. After a few more moments, Kyla opened her eyes and looked at Sky. Better? She asked gently. Tears streamed down Sky's face. A little, she whispered the understatement. I'm so tired. Kyla laughed softly. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear you say that. Me too, Sky admitted. Jareth, escort Kai to the medical suite for some well-earned rest, Kate instructed. Gladly, Jareth confirmed and moved toward her. No sedation. Sky flinched. Jareth paused and smiled. I don't think you'll need it anymore. Sky breathed deep, her lungs completely filling for what felt like the first time since she was a child, and moved to get off the floor. Once on her feet, Jareth gently took her arm to guide her to the suite. Sky stopped and turned toward Cade. May I ask you a favor? Her voice trembled, addressing the man who still scared her, unsure how he would react to her request, but knew she needed to at least try. He tilted his head, indicating he was waiting. Sky took another calming breath. Would you send an order to all the privateer factions that Niobe is not to be attacked using one of the frequencies the consortium monitors? His eyes squinted. What good would that do? We already know the attacks aren't done by them. I know, but the only reason the consortium is able to get away with it is because they know it could never be proved which faction committed any of the attacks. Sky had thought of this the moment she saw Cade and suspected who he was. Now that she knew, he was the only one who could do it. The known distrust the factions have with each other prevents them from knowing they are being blamed for something none of them are doing. The consortium is relying on this to keep stealing their resources and continue to be the sole source of Militrex while claiming theirs is synthetic. If they know you have ordered it safe, they won't risk the anger and possible retaliation of all the privateer factions if they realize they're being blamed for something they're not doing. The consortium would be forced to make a different strategy, which would take time and allow Niobe to recover, at least a little. Kyla's face lit up. It would take them longer now that you aren't available to come up with the plan. Sky thought, oh, I would have come up with a plan. They wouldn't have liked it, but they wouldn't realize it until it was too late. They both laughed. Cade watched her, eyes locked when she noticed him looking at her. Her breath caught. What was he thinking? Their manufacturing infrastructure was crippled during the first few attacks. Without the ability to manufacture Millitrax, their financial situation will still be limited. I'm not sure they would have time to recover as much as you wish they would. Sky remembered. No one had said anything about it. They didn't know. Jareth, how many Helix devices do we have on board? Jareth stilled by her side. One. Why? Just as she thought. They have a helix on the planet that can process Millitrax. It will be smaller batches at first, but should be profitable enough for them to get started. There were two helix devices? Jareth wondered. Sky flinched, but remembered they knew what she could do. There were enough instruments in the medical suite. I combined them and wished they would become another complete helix. The next morning it was ready. I hid it until we needed it for Niobe. Sky started to wonder if they were mad she cost them a healing device that used some of the resources on the warship. Her head lowered slightly. There wasn't time to retrieve it after the attack. There, hopefully they wouldn't blame her, even though she had planned to leave it there all along. Cade's eyes started to twinkle as they shifted to Kyla. The edges of his mouth twitched. The privateers could organize a supply system to get it to planets that need it. Ones the consortium has purposely denied due to criticism of the potentate's policy. Kyla's face brightened. I might know some routes they could take that could keep them completely outside of consortium detection. I'll help, Sky offered, pulling away from Jareth. No, all four spoke at the same time. Sky froze. They didn't want her? Jareth came to her side. You need to rest. Your mind and body have been pushed to their limits for years. Both finally have a chance to recover. Please, Sky, just rest for now. Her body still felt weak, but her mind still wrestled with the fears it had believed for so long. She looked around the room, knew that everyone in it was brilliant, capable, and resourceful. Her mind finally accepted that they could be trusted. She didn't have to do everything. She could rest. That final thought made her knees buckle. Jeff caught her. That's it, he warned before lifting her up, held her tight in his arms, and carried her off the bridge. Sky leaned her head on his shoulder just to rest a moment before insisting he let her go so she could walk. The moment her head rested on his shoulder, she instantly fell asleep.